Hey, scientist. I'd like to read to you a section in your water and climate book. The header is Opinion and Evidence. This is interesting. It's connecting to our opinion writing discussions. Please track along and read along as I read. Two girls just finished a sponge activity. They were surprised that their 4-gram sponge soaked up 32 grams of water. That seems like a lot for such a small sponge. As they recorded data in notebooks, Tisha said, if we had a natural sponge, it would soak up even more water. How do you know? Asked Kim. I just know it would, replied Tisha. Natural things are always better. I would always choose a natural sponge. I'm sure it would work better. So you've never tested a natural sponge to find out if it can soak up more water than a synthetic sponge? Asked Kim. Well, no. I never actually did the experiment, admitted Tisha. But it makes sense to me that the natural sponge would soak up water better. We could find out for sure, said Kim. Let's get a natural sponge and test it. That should give us evidence about your opinion that natural things are better. Here's a graphic of a natural sponge and a synthetic sponge. So synthetic can be a synonym for made up with plastic, factory made. A natural sponge is a sponge that has been found in nature. The experiment. The next day, the girls stayed after school to do their experiment. They had a new synthetic sponge and a new natural sponge, but there was a problem. The natural sponge was much larger than the synthetic one. Tisha and Kim decided to cut 3 small samples from each sponge. The small samples would all be the same shape and same mass. They cut and trimmed and weighed carefully. Finally, all 6 samples were exactly 5 grams. And if you're wondering, grams is a unit of measurement for weight. And it belongs in the metric system. How should we soak the sponges to make sure it is a fair experiment? Asked Kim. I know, said Tisha. We can use a stopwatch to time 1 minute while we hold the sponges under water. That will really soak the sponges. Then we'll take them out of water. We will hold them over the basin for 30 seconds. Then we will weigh them to find out how much water soaked into each sponge. That sounds like they have a plan. That sounds good to me, agreed Kim. Let's get started. The girls soaked and weighed the first synthetic sponge. They repeated the procedure with the other 2 synthetic sponges. They did this to make sure their measurements were accurate. Then they did the same thing with the 3 natural sponges. They recorded their measurements in the table. So the girls soaked the sponges for 1 minute, and the caption is reading to us, then they let the sponges drip for 30 seconds. So this is how they measured, and as we work on our labs, we often record in our STEM notebooks our observations. So this is what they recorded as their data for their observations. Header, a second look. The girls studied the data. It looked like the synthetic sponge soaked up about 5 more grams of water than the natural sponge. Said Tisha. It looks like the natural sponge isn't better, at least not better at soaking up water. But you know what? I want to try one more thing. Let's squeeze as much water out of the sponges as we can. Then, starting with the damp sponges, we will repeat the experiment exactly. Then we will be sure our results are accurate. Kim thought that was a good idea. They repeated the experiment and recorded these data. So if we close read our table, we see that the factory-made sponge won. The mass was weighed at 7. And then after it soaked in water, it was 45. And then when they squeezed it out, it was 38 into the water, like the cup of water they were holding. So I'm looking at this and I'm comparing 45 to 38. Wonder what happened to the water. Okay, I see now that the synthetic sponge is better at soaking up water, said Tisha. The evidence is right there for all to see. From now on, I am going to use synthetic sponges to soak up spills, but I will still use natural sponges for other things because they last longer. Are you sure? Asked Kim. Header, opinion. Tisha likes natural things. She likes chairs made of wood. She likes t-shirts made of cotton. Her opinion is that natural things are always better. When she and Kim were working with sponges, Tisha claimed that natural sponges were better, but her claim was not based on data and evidence. Her claim was her opinion. Opinions are based on what a person believes to be true, not on scientific data. Evidence is based on observation and scientific data. In science, claims are tested with experiments. Experiments produce data and evidence. The evidence will show if the claim is true or not true. Sometimes more experiments need to be done before a conclusion can be reached. When Tisha and Kim did their experiment, the evidence showed that the synthetic sponge soaked up more water. Tisha changed her mind about the sponges after she studied the evidence. Before we close our reading, here are questions I'd like you to think about. Thinking about opinions and evidence. Tisha claimed that natural sponges were better. What did she base that claim on? Was it an opinion? Was it her evidence? Why did Tisha and Kim repeat their experiment? Was Tisha's claim that natural sponges last longer based on opinion or evidence? What is the difference between opinion and evidence? Thank you for reading along and learning about the difference between making an opinion and basing your opinion on factual evidence.